The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell starts right now. Hi, Lawrence.
Hey, Jen. It is such an agonizing story for all of us who know Savannah. It has been just an awful thing to even contemplate that this could possibly be happening to her and her family.
Yeah, it is. You don't want it to happen to anyone. She is somebody who I worked with as she was a journalist, and I worked in 2 different White Houses. She is smart and hard-hitting and an incredible reporter and journalist and host, but she is also a beautiful soul. And it's heart-wrenching to hear about it and watch her and her siblings there in that video.
Yeah, and the audience should know that the person in Savannah Guthrie, the person you see on TV, is the real person. You all do really know her. That's who she is, and this is just such a difficult thing for us to all try to deal with.
Absolutely, we're all thinking of her and praying for her. I think everybody who's ever come in contact with her.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Lawrence.
Thank you. It should have not happened. And with those exact words today, Donald Trump found himself in direct, sharp conflict with the man who wants to take his place. Vice President James David Vance, who is the front runner for the next Republican nomination for president, said in an interview today, "I don't think it's smart to prejudge the investigation." When he was asked by the Daily Mail if he would apologize to Alex Preddy's family for calling him an assassin who tried to murder federal agents, and of course, J.D. Vance did not apologize. Hours after Alex Preddy was shot 10 times, and what video proves was a murder by Donald Trump's Border Patrol agents, J.D. Vance judged the case when he endorsed a tweet by Stephen Miller that said an assassin tried to murder federal agents. J.D. Vance did, at that moment, what he now today says is not smart. He prejudged the case immediately, hours after it happened, and he prejudged the case of Alex Preddy when video was already available and being watched around the world that proved Alex Preddy did absolutely nothing to provoke even a single gunshot being fired at him. We've all now seen the video of that gang of federal agents who had surrounded Alex Preddy backing away from him and leaving him face down in the street with no one around him and him not moving, while 2 and only 2 of those agents continued to fire shots at Alex Preddy's body, while most of those agents obviously and correctly felt completely unthreatened by Alex Preddy's unmoving body and never fired a shot. The proof of how wrong it was to shoot at Alex Preddy was that most of the agents surrounding him saw no reason to fire at him at any time. And today, Donald Trump did what J.D. Vance now says is not smart. When Donald Trump said, it should have not happened. Donald Trump said that in a taped pre-Super Bowl interview with NBC's Tom Llamas. And so Donald Trump has rendered his judgment on the murders of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. He was referring to both of those cases when Donald Trump used the words, should have not happened. That means those cases, if they should not have happened, are murder or manslaughter or negligent homicide. And they are both cases of wrongful death, which should be adjudicated in civil lawsuits, in addition to any criminal procedure in a possible homicide prosecution. Donald Trump said it should have not happened in what could be his most watched interview of the year, because Donald Trump knows that that is what the people of the United States of America believe. Donald Trump has seen polls, and he knows that the polls are crushing his invasion of American cities. And that's why Donald Trump is saying it should have not happened. The protesters forced him to say that. That's why Donald Trump told Tom Llamas that he ordered the removal of 700 of his invading agents from Minneapolis. Donald Trump said that that was his idea. That retreat was his idea. Donald Trump told Tom Yamas a poisonous lie, insulting the intelligence of anyone who will hear it. Polls show that Donald Trump's Super Bowl audience for this interview will not believe his poisonous lie about his ICE agents, because a new poll shows that 63% disapprove of how ICE is enforcing immigration laws. 63% disapprove of Donald Trump's invasion forces. 61% believe that Donald Trump's administration has not given an honest account of the shooting death of Alex Preddy by federal immigration agents. Donald Trump was speaking directly to those 61% when he said it should have not happened. But Donald Trump is going to offend the 63% who disapprove of the way ICE is enforcing immigration laws when they hear his sick and poisonous lie about ICE and the murders of Renee Good and Alex Preddy.
I'm not happy with what happened there. Nobody could be happy, and ICE wasn't happy either.
ICE wasn't happy? ICE shouldn't be happy. Most law enforcement officers are not happy when they are forced to fire their guns in defense of their lives. Most law enforcement officers who kill in the line of duty are not happy to do it. It is the rarest thing a police officer in America can do. Almost all police officers in America never have occasion to shoot at anyone in their entire careers. You'd never know that from the trigger-happy cops delivered to us in the fantasies of Hollywood screenwriters. But most police officers in a 30-year career never shoot at anyone. And the good police officers who are forced to shoot at someone never feel happy about it. But Donald Trump's invasion forces are different. If you have been given reason by what you've seen on video to suspect that they are enjoying the cruelty, you have been proven right. Donald Trump's Border Patrol agent Charles Exum tried to murder a 30-year-old American citizen in Chicago, Miramar Martinez. She's a Montessori school teacher who suffered 7 gunshot wounds fired at her by Agent Charles Exum for absolutely no reason. And the legal proof that there was no reason is that the criminal charge filed against her was dropped. She was accused briefly before the charge was dropped of trying to ram her car into Charles Exum's massive SUV. Video shows that that never happened, according to Miramar Martinez's attorneys. And Charles Exum drove that SUV from Chicago to Maine, apparently to remove the evidence, the crucial evidence, remove the proof that it never happened, because surely there would have been body damage on that SUV if she ever tried to ram that SUV. How did Charles Exum feel after he discovered that the person he was firing at was an American citizen born and raised in Chicago with no criminal record, who was a Montessori school teacher, who had never committed a crime in her life, and was on her way to her church that morning to deliver some clothes she was giving away? Did he say, "I'm not happy with it"? Did he say it should not have happened? No, he did not. We know what he said. After the shooting, he texted his Trump invasion force teammates. And what he said is the clearest window we have into the dark, ugly hearts of Donald Trump's invasion forces. Miramar Martinez testified to a joint House and Senate hearing yesterday where not a single Republican showed up. And the text immediately after she was shot by the man who tried to murder her were read by Congressman Robert Garcia.
It's disgusting, shameful, and it gets worse. Ms. Martinez, these are images of texts sent by the agent who shot you. And they're actually disturbing to read, but I think it's important for the public to see this. The agent linked an article about your shooting and texted, "Read it. 5 shots, 7 holes. I fired 5 rounds and she had 7 holes. Put that in your book, boys. Oh, well, it is what it is. Happens. This is someone that works for the United States government. I fired 5 rounds and she had 7 holes. Now, he was talking about you, and it's our understanding that he was actually bragging about his aim shooting an unarmed American citizen. Is that right?
Correct.
The entrance and exit wounds created those 7 wounds from the 5 shots. The reply texts from his no doubt approving teammates were redacted when his texts were introduced in court before the case was dismissed. He texted to his friends a news report of the shooting, and his last entry in the text chain was, "Sweet, my 15 minutes of fame, LMAO." The deeply perverse and murderously dangerous Charles Exum, who should never be allowed to carry a gun for any reason for the rest of his life, could not have been happier after shooting the 30-year-old woman for no reason. Laugh. That's what the L means, and LMAO, you know what the rest of it means. That is as deeply evil as American law enforcement can get. Charles Exum doesn't have a long career in federal service ahead of him because he will be fired within days after the next presidential inauguration, when a Democrat is very likely going to be taking the oath of office. 63% of America disapproves of Charles Exum. 63% of America disapproves of the way ICE is enforcing immigration laws, and they reach that conclusion without ever seeing those texts from Charles Exum. And those 63% will be repulsed by Donald Trump's pathological lie about ICE agents feeling bad about the murders of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. Listen to how far Donald Trump was willing to go in telling this perverse lie.
It should have not happened. It was a very sad, to me, it was a very sad incident, 2 incidents. And, you know, they mentioned the one now, they don't mention the other. Well, I think they were both sad. And, you know who feels worse about it than anybody? The people of ICE.
Worse about it than anybody. It takes a pathological liar for whom words mean nothing to claim that the federal agents who murdered Renee Good and Alex Preddy feel worse about it than their families do. Let's see what they texted their friends after they committed those murders. Let's see that evidence. Hand over that evidence. If they feel badly about it, hand over the evidence of those texts to the local prosecutor in Minneapolis, County Attorney Mary Moriarty, who will join us in a moment. She needs those texts for her investigation. Think of how sick and unfeeling and inhuman you would have to be to say that those ICE agents feel worse about those murders than anybody. It's the kind of thing you can verbally stumble into, but as soon as you heard yourself say it, you'd correct it and say, of course, they don't feel as bad as the families of the dead, but they feel pretty bad about it. Donald Trump's an extremist in all things, and he's always an extremist in his language, in his pathological lying. So he can't say his ICE agents feel bad. He has to say they feel worse than anybody. And because he was somehow condemned to a life without human feeling, he has no idea what it means to say a thing like that. No, Donald, your ICE agents do not feel worse than Renee Good's brothers, who testified at that joint House-Senate hearing yesterday.
Sunlight doesn't ask for recognition. It just gives. It warms, it nurtures, it helps things grow. Renee did that for us. She helped us grow. She helped us believe in ourselves. She helped us see the good, even when life felt heavy. Renee is not gone from us. She's in the light that finds us on hard days. She's in the resilience we didn't know we had until we needed it. She's in the laughter, the memories, the love that continues to grow. Like dandelions, like sunlight, and like Renee. Thank you.
Donald Trump, of course, didn't hear a word of that. He would never listen to that. And he would feel nothing if he heard it, because he is, by all evidence, incapable of human feeling. 303 former Justice Department prosecutors have signed a letter to Attorney General Pamela Bondi objecting to Donald Trump's Justice Department refusing to cooperate with state and local prosecutors in Minneapolis who are investigating the deaths of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. The letter says blocking a state law enforcement agency from investigating potential violations of state law in its own jurisdiction would mark a severe departure from established DOJ norms and pose a serious threat to the rule of law. The letter, of course, can have no meaning in the Trump Justice Department that is devoted to the rule of Trump without the slightest regard to the rule of law. This week, Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty, who has jurisdiction over homicide cases in Minneapolis, sent demand letters to the Justice Department and the Homeland Security Department for evidence needed in her investigation of the death of Renee Good specifically. Mary Moriarty issued a statement that said the federal government has been clear that they are not conducting an investigation into Renee Good's death, but we are. We require these records as part of our ongoing thorough investigation into her death at the hands of federal agent Jonathan Ross. Let's see Jonathan Ross's texts after he fired those shots, after he walked up to that car and saw Renee Good bleeding to death in the front seat of that car. Let's see his texts. Hand them over to the county attorney in Minnesota. 8 more assistant U.S. attorneys have resigned from the Minnesota U.S. Attorney's Office. That's in addition to 6 veteran prosecutors who resigned last month. One prosecutor who appeared to be on the verge of resigning got fired after she told a federal judge that she was trying to comply with his orders but was completely overwhelmed and was hoping the judge would jail her for contempt so that she could actually get some sleep. Things never heard by from a federal prosecutor before in history, including her pronouncement, a convincing one, in which she said, "This job sucks." And so tonight, the prosecutors are resigning. The protesters in Minneapolis are winning. 700 of Donald Trump's invasion forces are retreating from Minneapolis in a victory for the protesters, and in what might be the protesters' biggest victory yet. They have forced Donald Trump to admit to the world it should have not happened. Leading off our discussion tonight is Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty. Thank you very much for joining us again tonight. You have made the point that the Trump Justice Department has said, we are not investigating the death of Renee Good. That would leave, it seems, available to you any and all evidence they might possess in that case.
It should. And I will say about Trump's statement today, words are really hollow. If he really means that that should not have happened, I think a couple of things should happen. He should end the occupation now in the Twin Cities, and he should give us all of the evidence in both of the Renee Good and Alex Preddy cases. In fact, as you mentioned, we issued a demand letter, as we are required to do to get federal records, demanding access to the information in the Renee Good case. We're about to do that in the Preddy case. So, words don't matter. If he really means what he says, then give us that information that we need to do a thorough and complete investigation and end this occupation right now.
Miramar Martinez's defense lawyer was able to obtain the texts from Charles Exum, the man who tried to murder her. Would you have the same power to obtain the texts of Jonathan Ross, who shot and killed Renee Good?
So it's it's very complicated, the federal overlay here. So we could, if we were talking about a state agent or somebody who is employed by the state, we could subpoena that. We could get a warrant actually for a cell phone, which law enforcement could analyze. We cannot do that with federal employees. And there's a process called TUI. The letters that we submitted, or the letters we submitted earlier this week, were TUI demands. That is the process that we are required to go through by the United States Supreme Court when we want information from a federal agency. So we are asking for the phones, the text, and so much more, but we have to get that from the federal agency, which is why I said, you know, we're waiting for a response from the federal agency. And once again, if this administration wants to be true to its word, then why not give us that information that we've already asked for?
What is the legal significance of the president who sent those agents to Minneapolis saying it should not have happened?
Probably more in a civil context, a civil lawsuit, not really in a criminal lawsuit or criminal charges or investigation. But once again, it's hard to believe anything that this administration says. You know, for instance, Holman had a press conference this morning, and at the beginning of it, he said they were going to withdraw 700 of the agents. And by the way, that leaves 2,300 still here if they actually are withdrawing those 700, because by the end of the press conference, he actually said the withdrawal of agents is dependent on the cooperation of the state. And one thing that I wrote down, because it struck me, was the community must end the resistance. So essentially what Holman is saying and what this administration is saying is we will withdraw our occupation of Minnesota if you stop exercising your First Amendment rights. In other words, if you capitulate to our demands, that is when we will end this occupation, which of course is preposterous to say, end the resistance, stop exercising your First Amendment rights.
Mary Moriarty, thank you very much for starting off our discussions tonight.
Of course, thank you.
Thank you. And coming up, Steve Bannon says Donald Trump is going to have ICE agents surround polling places during the election this year and the next presidential election. Senator Adam Schiff joins us next. The only president in history who has never read or would be able to comprehend one word of the United States Constitution said this.
If you think about it, a state is an agent for the federal government in elections. I don't know why the federal government doesn't do them anyway.
The answer to his bewilderment, of course, is in the Constitution. Officials in Fulton County, Georgia, filed a motion in federal court seeking the return of the 2020 election ballots that were seized by Donald Trump's FBI last week in a domestic FBI raid supervised for the first time in history by a president's director of national intelligence. The reality-challenged Tulsi Gabbard. Here is Fulton County Commission Chair Rob Pitts.
We will use every resource at our disposal to fight for their vote, and that we will fight using all resources against those who seek to take over our elections. Our Constitution itself is at stake in this fight.
Today, Donald Trump's confidant, Steve Bannon, announced the plan for voting in Donald Trump's America.
We're going to have ICE surround the polls come November. We're not going to sit here and allow you to steal the country again. And you can whine and cry and throw your toys out of the pram all you want, but we will never again allow an election to be stolen. But let's put you on notice again. ICE is going to be around the polls in the 2026 midterm elections.
Joining us now is Democratic Senator Adam Schiff of California. He's a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Senator, you have heard the plan, ICE surrounding the polls. What can be done about it?
Well, this is Steve Bannon speaking the plain truth about their intentions, which is Donald Trump will be your tin pot dictator if you let him. It is our plan to make sure there is not a free and fair election. We're going to resort to taking ballot boxes in Fulton County, Georgia, or the last election. We just learned that Tulsi Gabbard oversaw some kind of a law enforcement operation in Puerto Rico that seized voting machines and data. The DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, has no election remit in terms of domestic law enforcement. But we are seeing a concerted effort to try to overturn what they expect will be a very unfavorable election against them. So we are doing everything possible to prepare. Of course, we will litigate. Of course, we will do everything possible to prevent Trump from deploying essentially the palace guard to polling places. This is what tin pot dictators do. But in addition to litigation, we're developing legislative strategies. It will also, I think, most importantly, mean that we have to mobilize people to turn out in such high numbers to so overwhelm the elections in the sense of winning them overwhelmingly, that they're not close, that there's no opportunity to contest them. That's really our best protection, is just a massive turnout operation to make sure they lose, and they lose handily, because we can see, and they are telling us, they intend to try to cheat.
So Senate Democrats are currently in a negotiation with the Republican Majority Leader and with Donald Trump over future funding of ICE. Wouldn't it be demand number one in the Democratic Senate negotiating position, no ICE at polling places?
I think, and we just got the list that the leadership put out that Senator Schumer sent to Leader Thune and the Speaker. Part of, I think, what we're demanding in this is that there be no ICE presence at sensitive locations, like voting places, like schools, like churches. So that certainly is a very important element. In terms of the most important element, I would definitely rank protecting our elections, the ultimate safeguard in a constitutional democracy, as a very, very top priority. But we also have to end these deadly sweeps. We have to end the deadly use of force. We need independent investigations. We need ICE to be identified, not wearing masks, but wearing body cams and identification. There are a lot of high priorities. We don't want them battering people's doors down without a warrant. But I agree with you, Lawrence, making sure that they're not there interfering on Election Day is also a really high priority.
Yeah, and this seems like the moment where the Democrats really do have the power to prevent this, since it will require 60 votes to get a funding bill for ICE through the United States Senate. Can't do that without Democratic votes. Can't do it without a negotiation. It's why the negotiation's happening. And if the Democrats' number one position in this is no ICE at polling places, then ICE will basically be the subject of a government shutdown, or Donald Trump will have to agree to that demand.
Well, we're going to maximize the use of our bargaining position in every way. And we have to obviously look out for other contingencies. Even if we are successful in banning ICE from being present at polling places, that won't necessarily stop Donald Trump from deploying the military or deploying other law enforcement agencies. We're going to have to do what we did basically in the run-up to the 2020 election, which is try to anticipate all of the illegality, all of the efforts to suppress the vote, all of the efforts to overturn the vote that may take place during, before, and after the midterms. This is something I discussed with leadership again just today on the Senate floor. So we are gearing up and we are preparing, but hearing Steve Bannon make these claims, hearing Speaker Johnson cast doubt on the elections, and what a shameful thing, Lawrence, we heard from him yesterday when he was saying that, well, in California, we have House Republican candidates who are ahead on Election Day and fall behind every time there's a new round of absentee ballots. just shameful to suggest, well, that's inherently fraudulent. And he goes on to say, well, I can't prove any of this, but people are doubting our elections. Well, of course they're doubting them when people like the Speaker are pushing out lies, when the President is pushing out lies, when Steve Bannon is pushing out lies, and when they've got their media amplifiers to amplify those lies.
And of course, California is a pioneer in mail-in voting, has massive mail-in voting, which means that the mail-in votes are counted later than the votes that are cast on that day. Everybody in politics knows this. Everyone knows how to watch those election returns. Speaker Johnson, pure lying about that. Senator Adam Schiff, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Lawrence.
And coming up, New Jersey Governor Mikey Sherrill showed in her last election campaign how Donald Trump loses elections for Republicans, and Donald Trump keeps doing it. That's next with Governor Mikey Sherrill when she joins us. Remember Infrastructure Week, the week that never happened during the first Trump presidency? Well, it's happening now, and Donald Trump's version of Infrastructure Week is to kill the most important infrastructure project in the United States. Donald Trump is trying to stop the funding for construction for a new tunnel under the Hudson River, connecting the state of New York and the state of New Jersey, a project that already secured funding with bipartisan support during the Biden presidency. And now the Interstate Commission in charge of building the tunnel has filed a lawsuit in federal court against the Trump administration for withholding $205 million in payments for work on the tunnel. The last Republican mayor of New York City, billionaire Michael Bloomberg, writes, "This is not some local pet project. It's of national economic importance. The new tunnel will allow passengers up and down the East Coast to move faster and more reliably, while also mitigating road congestion in numerous states and relieving air travel pressures. It will also expand the entire region's labor market, accelerate its housing growth, and increase its business activity and investment. From an economic perspective, the tunnel is an absolute no-brainer, and it's long overdue." New Jersey's Governor Mikey Sherrill won her election last year by the surprisingly large margin of 14 points, and fighting for the new tunnel was one of the ways she beat Donald Trump's chosen candidate for governor of New Jersey. Joining us now is New Jersey's Democratic Governor Mikey Sherrill. Governor, thank you very much for joining us tonight. There's Donald Trump, who doesn't understand anything about business and the economy the way Mike Bloomberg does, and you are going to have to fight for every penny now, it seems.
That's exactly right. We are already at work on this tunnel. Millions have been spent on the high-end tunneling gear. It's at the site. We've employed about 1,000 people already. I was just over at Tunnelly Avenue the other day, where concrete pads are being poured in anticipation of getting the tunneling gear ready to go. And all this could come to a stop Friday, which is why in New Jersey, New York, our states are suing the president because he's illegally withholding this money that could account for almost 100,000 jobs in the region and about $20 billion in economic output.
Yeah, and this kind of funding is not easy to achieve. It took a bipartisan support group to get it done. People were working on it for years, many, many years, some over the course of decades from the conception of the first notion of it. And so you win this, you get it, and Donald Trump comes in and says, "I'm just going to take it away."
Yeah, fighting tooth and nail in the first Trump administration. I was called the tunnel-obsessed Congresswoman. I am now the tunnel-obsessed governor because I am not going to quit. This is too important to the region. It's too important to the country. This is the most important infrastructure program in the nation. It is a rail tunnel from New Jersey into New York. About 200,000 people go through the current rail tunnel right now. It was damaged by Superstorm Sandy. As you heard from Mike Bloomberg, who talked a little bit about how important it is to business and commerce, not just for the region, but for the country. It makes no sense when you see a president who is harming jobs, harming the economy right here, especially when his jobs numbers are not looking so hot. But as we've seen across the country, every time Trump gets involved, costs go up and working people suffer.
I mean, and New York is the heartbeat of this economy and has been for a couple hundred years now in this country. Donald Trump doesn't seem to understand that you cannot attack it and then expect the economy to thrive, expect to see good economic numbers.
And Lawrence, if you'll forgive my state pride, I would say a lot of that heartbeat in New York is fueled by New Jersey workers. And in order for that to continue, this tunnel has to function. And as I said, the current Hudson River Tunnel right now has been damaged. It's over 115 years old. We have got to keep at work on this. It is such a no-brainer. And so to take the money that has already been committed, $15 billion, $4 billion of it already ready to be put to work in an account, and to put a stop to it, which will end things on Friday if he is not stopped from this illegal action. It really is such a harm to the region and such a complete waste of money, given that we have already spent money, we are ready to go, and any delay will just raise costs.
What did you learn in your campaign and in this story about Donald Trump's ability to lose elections for Republicans?
He hurts working people. He hurts families because, this tunnel isn't just about all of the people that could be employed with really good jobs in this region. It's also about those commuters that go back and forth every single day. My husband's one of them. It's the difference if, you're having a delay between picking your kid up at daycare on time or making it home to eat with your family or your kid's soccer or basketball game. And Trump just doesn't seem to care about families and people across the country. He's been enriching himself now to the tune of billions of dollars and really ending the ability for other families to make it here, to create the opportunity that this country is so known for. And that's why I keep saying it makes no sense. I'm going to fight it tooth and nail. We're in court now, and we are going to see that the workers can continue, that commuters get the type of commute they deserve, and that the economy can flourish.
New Jersey Governor Mikey Sherrill, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Coming up, Donald Trump's White House counsel says that Donald Trump has no involvement, that's the term, no involvement in his family business deals, including a huge payoff from the United Arab Emirates. So it must be true, right? He has no involvement. Tim O'Brien has literally written the book on Donald Trump's business dealings and his involvement, and will join us next. The Wall Street Journal reports 4 days before Donald Trump's inauguration last year, lieutenants to an Abu Dhabi royal secretly signed a deal with the Trump family to purchase a 49% stake in their fledgling cryptocurrency venture for $500 million, according to company documents and people familiar with the matter. The buyers would pay half up front, steering $187 million to Trump family entities. The deal with World Liberty Financial, which hasn't previously been reported, was signed by Eric Trump, the president's son. The investment was backed by Sheikh Tahun bin Zayed Al Nahyan, an Abu Dhabi royal who has been pushing the U.S. for access to tightly guarded artificial intelligence chips, according to people familiar with the matter. The Wall Street Journal reports World Liberty Financial, the Trump company, says Trump was not involved in the deal. And White House counsel actually says Trump, quote, has no involvement in the business deals that would implicate his constitutional responsibilities, end quote. Months later, in May of last year, the Trump administration committed to give the tiny Gulf monarchy access to around 500,000 of the most advanced AI chips a year, enough to build one of the world's biggest AI data center clusters. Joining us now is senior executive editor of Bloomberg Opinion, Tim O'Brien. He is the author of Trump Nation and an author of an earlier book on Donald Trump's business dealings. So, Tim, the White House counsel assures us Donald Trump not involved in any way. So I guess that answers that.
Yeah, Lawrence, I have a bridge to sell you. We've been talking about this topic for so long, and the core thing for everyone to remember is that the Trumps and the president himself have never put any kind of meaningful safeguards around their business dealings or the stewardship of any of their assets. It was an issue during his first term. It's even more of an issue now. He's done nothing that approximates what any of his predecessors in the Oval Office did to make sure the American public didn't have to worry that the president of the United States was getting bribed and was pursuing policies that were against their own interests as citizens and taxpayers. And what's extraordinary about the Trump administration, Lawrence, is that it isn't just one or two or three deals. It is happening almost on a weekly basis. And Trump's sons, for whatever they say about there being a firewall between them and their father, they wouldn't be able to do most of these deals but for their proximity to the White House. The reason people are transacting with them is because their father's the president, for no other reason. They're making money in businesses they had no experience in, like crypto, cell phones. We could go down the list. So they're enriching themselves along the way. The extra wrinkle in this Emirati deal is it isn't just the Trumps lining their pockets. They're also compromising national security. The issue with advanced computer chips transiting through the UAE is that the UAE also does a lot of business with China. And during the Biden administration, these chips were sanctioned. They were not allowed to be exported to the UAE because the Biden administration worried they'd end up in Chinese hands. The implication of that is twofold. We're in a foot race with China around AI and technology development, and also militarily. And these chips are central to both of those endeavors. And within 2 months of being inaugurated, Donald Trump was already cutting a deal with the UAE to get those chips over there. And it wasn't for any other reason, it would appear, than ultimately they were going to get $187 million for doing that.
And that story demonstrates Donald Trump's complete lack of concern for national security, his complete phony lying about, how tough he is on China, all of this stuff. It is all just pure act. This is what he actually does. Forget about what he says. This is what he does.
100%. Remember when we were talking years ago at the end of his first term, it was the end of COVID. Well, COVID was sort of in full thrall. And the lion's share of Trump's assets were tied up in about 5 or 6 skyscrapers on the West Coast and in New York, all of which COVID was compromising. The occupancy rates had plunged. Trump had a lot of debt on those buildings. There was a lot of speculation about whether or not he could keep them afloat. Fast forward to his second term, I can guarantee you one of the primary things on his mind after he got elected was to make sure he could pay down all that debt as quickly as he possibly could. And so that's another thing informing his motivations. He's lining his pocket, he's digging out from debt, and he doesn't care about the implications for national security or the American experiment.
Tim O'Brien, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Lawrence.
We'll be right back. Tim O'Brien gets tonight's last word.